I've heard it said that the divisional playoff weekend is the best weekend in the NFL. This may be college football's equivalent. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you stopping by for the best in discussion, debate, and analysis. We go live with you each and every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 10 p.m. Eastern Time for post game. And the guy that has kept that streak alive to help us over the last week or so and throughout the 2025 college football season, of course, Matt Zemek, Trojans Wire, also host at the USC channel at the Voice of College Football, and running our vocfb.com website. So check it out. We will leave the link in the chat. Matt, how are you doing tonight?
Well, this turned out to be a pretty busy news day over at USC with D'Anton Lynn leaving for Penn State, his alma mater. You know, Mama called, and with Matt Campbell there instead of James Franklin, D'Anton Lynn felt, hey, this is the right move for me. And so it certainly raises some interesting possibilities at USC. And I think, you know, the top target pretty much needs to be Pete Kwiatkowski, recently fired by Sark at Texas. You know, you start with just the simple reality. Texas's defense under Kwiatkowski held Ohio State to 14 points in Columbus. So if you're Lincoln Riley, you want to compete in the Big Ten, you have a coordinator, defensive coordinator available who can hold down Ohio State. That seems like a pretty good place to start for USC.
Leave those comments and questions there in the chat. We appreciate your super chat contributions. We are here for 1 hour for sure, and you can extend that time, of course, with Matt, myself. That is up to you. So we appreciate your contributions. Please like the video. Please subscribe as well. And again, you can join Matt and the crew over on the USC channel Tuesdays and Thursdays. Correct, Matt?
Well, Tuesdays, and we're doing a live post-game show after the Alamo Bowl. So not our regular time slot, but right after the game ends on Tuesday, we're going live.
USC and TCU getting together. The Alamo Bowl, of course, the Trojans in the running for a college football playoff spot, lost that third game in Eugene. So what are your thoughts about what this means to USC? Is this pretty much just a throwaway game, or is there anything to prove out there?
You know, so I'm not too interested in the game, but I will say that, like, if there is one thing for USC to grab onto in this game, it's this young, unproven defensive line, which really struggled to gel, struggled to master concepts and play consistently over the course of the regular season. Can this defensive line show up against TCU? Like, I don't need to see anything from the USC offense. Jaden Maiava's coming back. How he does against TCU doesn't feel like any sort of barometer. Keep in mind, Maiava did not play well against Texas A&M in USC's bowl game last season, and that really didn't matter. It was really more of just about furthering his football education, giving him some live reps. There's not a whole lot, and you know, there's no Mekhi Lemon or Jacoby Lane for him to throw the ball to in this game. So it's really just, can USC's defensive line, maybe also the linebackers, play really well? USC needs its front seven to be nastier, tougher, stronger. That's the one thing, you know, from a USC perspective, that the Trojans, I think, really need from this game. Other than that, it's about getting those groceries in the portal, supplementing that 2026 recruiting class. You know, so for the most part, it's a January focus. But if there is one thing from the Alamo Bowl, it's that defensive line.
The Alamo Bowl, much like the Holiday Bowl, comes to mind as being, you know, one of those casualties of the deteriorated bowl season, where that has been one of the better matchups, regardless of the conference affiliation. But it's strongly, and many times, and for many long durations, has been a Pac-12, Big 12 affair. Of course, there in the Alamo Bowl, the Big Ten has had a share in that throughout its history at times, but mostly the Pac-12 and the Big 12. And that's certainly given us a ton of college football memories, including a TCU comeback against Stanford at the Alamo Bowl in epic fashion roughly 10 years ago, a little less than that. I believe 2017, something in that range.
Yep.
In that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that was Kenny Hill, and then there was Bram Kohlhausen against Oregon a few years later. So
Right.
yeah, Alamo Bowl, Holiday Bowl, they've both been really special, and yeah, they don't have the same juice this time around, and that is definitely a loss for college football, no question about it.
Alamo and Holiday were typically those teams that just didn't quite get it done, didn't quite get to a conference championship game, but were extremely really good football teams. And we've seen some great matchups in those two locations. And of course, this USC tie into the Alamo is much like the Washington placement in the LA Bowl, one of the leftovers from the Pac-12 to finish up those contracts. All right, we will move on to the college football playoff as, again, we will scan the chat for your comments and questions, and I will leave the call in line. I do apologize for not doing that prior. I'm working on an Alabama-Indiana stats breakdown. They have one common opponent. No, I'm not putting a lot of stock in either one's game against Wisconsin, although they both did win the game by 24 points, but we did size that up. But all the national rankings of Indiana and Alabama. So that's going to be released, folks. First thing in the morning, you will see it there. All right, if you could watch one game, Matt, which one would it be? And we'll start with that one.
Well, just like I'm one of the biggest Rose Bowl fans on the planet, and I love that Indiana is there to give the game freshness, but purely we're talking football connoisseur. What's the best game? What's the best matchup? It's Oregon versus Texas Tech. In the Orange Bowl. It's 4 versus 5. It's exactly the kind of game that, we're getting in the 12-team playoff that we wouldn't have gotten in the 4-team playoff. So, generally in the NCAA tournament, you have some special 1 versus 8 games, the 8 seed that's been sleepwalking all season, then, throws everything into the kitchen sink in the second round. But usually it's the 4 versus 5 games that are always the most ferocious, intense games in that round of March Madness. And so it stands here. And, it's such a fun matchup, too. These are not blue bloods. These are new age powers fueled by NIL, Phil Knight, other boosters. These are new age teams. I mean, Oregon's been around for a bit, but not really a blue blood the way, Alabama is, the way Georgia is, the way Ohio State is. So much mystery, and you get these two teams both playing a long way from home at noon Eastern, body clock game. It's just everything about this game is a mystery. The Big Ten has a lot to prove. And Oregon has a lot to prove in terms of, the Big Ten is not just Indiana, Ohio State, and the 16 dwarfs. No, Oregon's actually a big boy program as well. And then Texas Tech, needing to prove that its dominance of the Big 12 can now carry over into a non-conference game on a very big stage. So there's just so much to like about this game. And part of it is just, you like going into a game not having the slightest idea what's going to happen. If we remember what it was like a decade ago, entering the season and then entering the playoff, Alabama, Clemson. There was just that aura of inevitability. And Oregon, Texas Tech really is that game which completely flips the script. Now, you could make an argument for Alabama, Indiana, because, the blue blood is the underdog and the Nowhereville program is the favorite and the unbeaten number 1 seed. So that's really interesting. But Oregon, Texas Tech is really the game you look at and say, man, this could go in any direction, and that is the most fun.
And this storyline is much deserved of Indiana being the rags to riches story, of course, as an all-time worst program or bottom 5 program in the country. But look at Texas Tech. Texas Tech has achieved nothing on a national scale in its history and has generally been a 7-5, 6-6 kind of program during my lifetime, and certainly achieved nothing before that on a national scale. And they have that opportunity as well. All right, Matt, we will head to the phone lines and we'll bring in DeReal MVP to get us started. DeReal, what's going on?
Not much. Hopefully you all had a great holidays. Got to enjoy the season. Got to spend time with family. I know I did, and hopefully you all two gentlemen did the same thing. But let me tell you, one place where it does not take off, and Mark, you were just this wall, like the dam and the mean that's holding back the floodwaters of stupidity. The amount of people I have seen bragging about the Big Ten going 5-0 and the SEC going 2-4 in bowl game is borderline disturbing. If you want to know why people believe in all sorts of crazy conspiracy theories on like why people wear maroon shirts and that's suspicious, just look to the same people that say the Big Ten going 5-0 is somehow this magical thing in bowl season. I mean, it's really bad out there.
Matt might be able to take a better guess at what year ESPN first launched the Bowl Cup. Guessing around 2000, something in that range. It's been going on for quite some time, where they simply add up the win-loss records for all the conferences and say, there is your winner. Conference USA went 3-1. That is the best bowl performance, and they win our Bowl Cup. And from year one, I thought, okay, this is a bunch of rubbish to anyone who actually understands the game and can break down the results and the performance. Yes, I get it. And it brings in the casual fan to say, you know, these are just the win-losses. And I do understand the marketing portion of it versus the actual, okay, let's recognize which conference performed best in the postseason. And it was rarely the conference that actually had the best winning percentage during the bowl season. So if we review what the Big Ten's accomplished thus far, Oregon wins a layup against James Madison. Obviously, that was not a game. It shouldn't be a game. And if anything, maybe Oregon underperformed in that game, but it was a win. They got the job done. Minnesota wins a slugfest of sorts. I actually watched that game. I didn't see a ton of football on my vacation, but at the same time, yeah, I made BYU Georgia Tech a priority. Really wanted to see that game, and I just kind of fell into Minnesota, New Mexico, and basically watched that entire game as well. And the Gophers, it's funny because PJ Fleck's got a 7-0 bowl record, but when you're constantly going 7-5 and facing the likes of Georgia Tech and Syracuse, it's a little less impressive when you really look at the results. And of course, he gets this win against New Mexico in overtime fashion. Let's see, we've got a Washington win in blowout fashion against Boise State. So is that a good win for the Big Ten? Again, what was expected? Double-digit favorite. They get the job done. They blow out Boise State. And there we are with that one. Penn State defeats Clemson. So you got a 6-6 over a 7-5 in the ACC. So again, is Clemson good? No. But are these two teams on the same level in their own conference, respective conferences? Yes. And the Big Ten did win the game. So there has to be some level of credit given there. And then, of course, Northwestern just completely waxes a MAC school 34-7. So I think I covered the territory for the Big Ten. Is there anything outstanding there? No. However, the conference did not stub its toe.
Right, but people are treating this, and some of these people are even in your chat, Mark. Not today, but I've seen in previous days talking about, well, the Big Ten's 5-0, the SEC's 2-4. The SEC lost to Virginia, and the SEC lost to Houston, and the SEC is garbage and terrible, and SEC bias and all this stuff. And I mean, it's just percolating out there. Like, that is the overwhelming narrative that the SEC just might as well pack up their football, head home, and just forfeit every game from here to the rest of the time. I mean, We're bragging about beating James Madison, Boise State, Central Michigan. What are we doing? What are we doing out here?
Well, we're doing what we do to basically plant a flag for whatever our cause is what people do on social media. So whatever the cause is, they're obviously, you know, after the Alabama-Oklahoma game, I saw anti-SEC people talking about, you know, that was a loss for the SEC. And I saw pro-SEC people saying, well, that was a win for the SEC. Well, okay. Let's understand.
Yeah, but is the critical thinking skills devolved to such a point where people can't even properly analyze the teams that they're playing and realize they're playing hot garbage?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, the real MVP, let me step in here. You know, in some ways, you know, this is about football and, you know, realizing, like, are you beating a quality opponent? Like you and I talked about this on Saturday night on the live show. But this is also beyond football in the sense that, you know, and this is a life lesson, not just a football lesson, is that, you know what, when the same situation or the same set of dynamics applies in a given context, you need to be able to appreciate it the same each time. If it cuts in favor of your team, if it cuts against your team, if it cuts in favor of your worldview, if it cuts against your worldview. And one of the big problems we have, this is not just football, this is about America, is that if the same situation exists, you should be able to see that truth or that reality for what it is, whether it's convenient or inconvenient. Whether you're helped by it or you're hurt by it. Like, that's intellectual honesty and consistency. And that is something that we need to see. But, you look around us, right? Just in life, in terms of the way people react to certain things, like one year, if this guy's president, it's a bad thing. Next year, someone else is president, and that same thing is viewed as being good, and this is not picking sides or choosing sides. The point is being consistent throughout everything. If the same dynamics exist, have the intellectual consistency to be able to call it the same, no matter what the outside circumstances are, other things changing around you. And so let's now bring it back to college football. Is that, and I've covered the sport for almost 25 years. I know how this works. If it favors the Big Ten, people are going to look at, the Big Ten talking point. Next year, if it favors the SEC, it's going to be spun the same way, just from the other side of the aisle. Let's just have some intellectual consistency, and that is definitely part of what you're getting at, DeReal MVP. I know.
And DeReal, part of that is also just anti-SEC people. If they've been salivating and waiting for 20 years to be able to do what they've been able to do specifically this season, and to a small extent the last two seasons, and that's obviously pounce on the SEC's shortcomings.
Yeah, but their shortcomings is they're losing to the number 2 or 3 at worst ACC team, and their 10th ranked SEC team in LSU lost to one of the 4 or 5 best Big 12 teams. Meanwhile, the Big 10 is beating up on a group of 5 teams. I mean, if the gap is really that wide, then the SEC should just succeed from college football and just create their own playoffs. I'm sorry, but if beating Central Michigan and Boise State and James Madison's this much of the gap to where that definitely closes it for these people, the SEC is so much better than even I thought it was just 2 weeks ago. I think it's relatively close, but the SEC has the decided edge. But I wasn't on here one saying week 1, Kentucky, their big win over Toledo, that's going to really separate the SEC from the Big Ten. But, Toledo went 6-2 in the same division in the MAC as Central Michigan and had a better record than Toledo or than Central Michigan. And people acting like the Central Michigan. It's just so bad. I didn't realize we lost this much critical thinking in society. Honestly, Matt, your answer may have been completely disappointed the Christmas spirit and jolliness off me, because you're absolutely right, and it's absolutely sad. That's the place we've gotten to where people can't even be intellectually honest about their own football conference.
Yep, everyone has the bunker mentality, and everyone feels the need to defend their priors, even if their priors have been proved wrong. But now let's shift gears, DeReal MVP, and move the conversation along. The real SEC versus Big Ten debate is before us, coming up. Yep. And especially with Indiana, Alabama, but also with Ohio State for the Big Ten against Miami, and then you have the Sugar Bowl as well. Your emerging thoughts, my question for you, DeReal, would be, how have your thoughts about the Indiana, Alabama Rose Bowl changed, if at all, from the night after Bama's win at Oklahoma to now? It's been a week and a half. Any new thoughts about the game now compared to a week and a half ago from your end?
Yeah, I think when I was, recency bias was thinking, man, Alabama can actually beat Indiana. But just the more times I've thought about it, I just think Indiana isn't going to make that key mistake with Kirk Cignetti. They're not going to turn the ball over. They're not going to fumble it. They're not going to make a dumb coaching timeout or anything like that. They're going to be buttoned up and polished. Whereas I just don't trust Alabama. So I do have Indiana winning the game. I do think it's closer than what I initially think it is. I've got Indiana winning 24-21. I think it's going to be a heck of a game. But I think Alabama is going to do something stupid late in the game, whether it's an interception, a fumble, a special teams field goal mistake, In Indiana, I just guarantee that they just won't have those issues because they haven't all year. And for the rest of the playoffs, the Big Ten's going to get 3 of the Final 4 unless something drastic happens. Like Oregon, Ohio State's basically like most people have them as locks to the next round. Alabama, Indiana, I've seen some people picking Alabama because they're Indiana, so that'll be a fun talking point to discuss next week.
Daryl, not even saying you're wrong, but just in terms of Vegas, Ohio State's a 9.5-point favorite. So like Vegas, that's games being treated as a lock. Yes. Oregon's just a 2.5-point favorite, minus 140 money line. Your reason for viewing that game as a lock?
Well, I'm not talking about my perception. I'm just saying the perception I've seen is everybody has picked Oregon. I don't think I've seen a single person pick Texas Tech. Maybe you have, Matt. I have not seen a single person pick Texas Tech to win this game. I've seen more people pick Alabama to beat Indiana.
Other predictions very closely, to be honest.
Fair enough. But to me, the national perception is Oregon should win this game. Yeah, Texas Tech's a cute story, and yeah, they're a good team, but their dominance is primarily because they're in a weaker conference. When they play legitimate elite football, they're going to get exposed. That's the narrative I'm seeing out there that's being built.
Fair enough. Now let me follow up on that Texas Tech angle, and Mark can chime in here, because Mark said he wanted to make sure you watch Georgia Tech BYU. Does the way BYU played Georgia Tech, did win, but didn't look dominant and was second best for a good portion of that game, does BYU's performance in the Pop-Tarts Bowl make you lean a little bit toward Oregon more than you were before the Pop-Tarts Bowl?
It did for me, but their quarterback was out for the game, so it's hard to tell in bowl games with opt-outs and stuff at key positions, really, but BYU didn't look as physically dominant against Georgia Tech on the lines of scrimmage as I thought they would.
BYU in general, even going back before this season, this is just BYU and their brand and what they bring in recruiting and in fundamentals. So it's half insult and half compliment coming from me. They're not an athletically gifted football team at an elite level. They're obviously athletes, and many of them will play in the NFL. But you can see a decided disadvantage that BYU has. You saw that against Texas Tech in both games. They were overwhelmed athletically. And then also you just see it in general when BYU, and they've got a very BYU-like football team this year, plays against elite competition. They have to play an airtight game. They have to win in a number of ways in which you can put that same label on academy teams to a different degree in a different way. I'm not saying apples to apples, or an Iowa team that plays a certain way and capitalizes on special teams and defense. But you can just watch BYU play, and they don't have the type of athletes that should be able to compete unless they are playing their A game. Therefore, yeah, I do have questions about Texas Tech. They didn't play a major non-conference game, and BYU was, and BYU, to its credit, was one of those teams this year that knew how to win games. And again, that's a calling card of that program for decades, but also Kalani Sitake's team, that they played some underwhelming football for 3 quarters against a lot of underwhelming football teams, but figured out a way in the 4th quarter how to win those games.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're going with Oregon, if I had to take a guess.
Well, I have not made a prediction, but I would lean that way. Yeah.
Which is weird because everybody's leaning that way, but yet Vegas has it as a toss-up game. I wonder if this is a metrics ball game, because you know how sometimes early on in the season, you'll have some Power 4 teams beat up on the group of 5 and win 70-0, and their metrics just astronomically sky high, and then you'll have a team like Ohio State only beat a team 35-3, and their metrics aren't as good. But over the course of the season, Ohio State wins all their games and it gets adjusted to where they're better. I wonder if Texas Tech is kind of doing the same thing, where they're not playing any elite competition, where Oregon's lost to some, and Texas Tech's metrics, because of how dominant they are against bad teams, is putting them over the top in terms of the metrics. I wonder if that's happening.
Could happen to an extent. I think one reason, Daryl, why this game is, close to a toss-up, in Oregon just a narrow choice in Vegas, is simply that Oregon has not played a complete game, an excellent A-plus level game against elite opposition this season. Lost to Indiana. Penn State was a struggle, and we thought that was like a mountaintop type game, but it turned out not to be. And then Oregon had a struggle at Iowa, needing a field goal on the last play. And even though comfortable win over USC, I mean, hey, I follow USC. USC's not that great a team. And, Oregon was very sloppy in that game, but USC was even sloppier. So I think, that fact that Oregon has not played an elite caliber game against high-end opposition, that's why the spread and the money line are so close right now.
So look at this. This is quite interesting, and it really was underlined against James Madison. Oregon was scoring so quickly against James Madison, and I know that that's a bit of an outlier as a G5 team, but Oregon was scoring so quickly in that game where if you look at the raw total offensive numbers, Texas Tech's number 5 in the nation in total offense, and Oregon still elite, but 11th. So there is a small gap there. But if you look at yards per play, Oregon averages almost a full yard better per play than Texas Tech. So they're certainly squeezing more out of their offense against, I'd really have to look at the two schedules, but what I would expect to be having played Indiana, Iowa, USC, and a few others, better defensive play top to bottom.
Yeah, that's surprising to me. And I think that if their offense really is that good, then they should win the football game. Oregon, I wonder if they got like the freeze point, Josh Pate's freeze point, where if you're good enough, you can beat them pretty easily. But if you can't, you just get crushed by them. Because you didn't include them, but I still view that Penn State as one of the better wins of the entire season going to Happy Valley. I know in terms of record or anything, they're not, but in terms of metrics, some metrics even have them as a top 20 team in the country. So I do think Oregon should win this game pretty comfortably, in my opinion. I think Texas Tech is going to get exposed a bit for their soft schedule. And I do think this is one of the reasons scheduling important non-conference game is critical to the health of the sport. That way we can get an idea of how these elite Big 12 teams are. Because we're at the end of the season, postseason play, and we have no idea. This is like a mid-major in basketball who dominates everybody, and we're like, well, we think they're good, but they might not be because they play nobody.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily going to champion Texas Tech's schedule because I think the Big 12 is a competitive league. It's a fun league, but it's not a great league. And again, BYU, the second best team in the conference, struggled and was just a more proficient team, just a more efficient team, and knew how to win games. And they were clearly record-wise the second best team in the conference. So again, we've got a situation where one Big 12 team is carrying the banner. So we'll see how well they perform. Arizona State did admirably last year.
Yeah, but you figure eventually the Big 12 needs to get over the hump and actually win a game if they want to be taken seriously as a league. Like, if they lose this game with how well Texas Tech has played the entire season in the Big 12, that's a very black mark on the Big 12 because they've been blowing everyone out. So...
yeah, we're still 0-4, right? When it comes to the Big 12 and the college football playoff, all those Oklahoma losses, and then Texas lost in their one appearance as a Big 12 team. And now we've got
they're 0-7
from Arizona State last year. Yeah,
0-7.
0-7. Yeah,
not great. They have to get over the hump eventually if they want to be taken seriously as a league and just not every year be penciled in as a one-bid league. Matt's dying to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the fact that Miami did beat Texas A&M to give the ACC a win, that conference sorely needed, it makes the Big 12 stand out by itself in a not good way. So that does up the ante for Texas Tech in the Orange Bowl, no question.
Absolutely. It's been great talking to you, gentlemen. And I guess I'll call you back after Tennessee beats Illinois, and then I don't know what Big Ten man's going to say after that game.
They'll say we're 5-1. All right, the real MVP, appreciate you being here. So there's a number of things that obviously he said that make a whole lot of sense. However, I will counter that to a certain extent, as I guess I did in the analysis and my response, is that you do have to win the football games. Now, unfortunately, these bowl games have less validity than they've ever had, and I hate that from an analysis standpoint, because I always cherish the bowl season just from the entertainment value and being able to see brands get together that we never see play. And then, look at this BYU Georgia Tech. I cannot remember BYU and Georgia Tech ever playing. I cannot remember Virginia and Missouri playing. Just over and over matchups. Tennessee and Illinois have never played in my lifetime. Those type of matchups that we never get to see. But then them also being, because all the players were on the field, those being like-seeded matchups from different conferences, and therefore we could gain something from the results. And now we see the result, we watch the game, and then we've got to start to figure out who was there, how much did that impact? Well, they missed 5. Well, they missed 8. And it becomes quite the calculation. All right, Matt, let's go back to the phone lines. Keep in mind, everyone, the Amazon link's in the description section of this video and all the videos. When you shop on Amazon, please use the link that we provide. Also, please like the video and subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. We got our buddy Dave stopping by. David, what's going on?
Mark, pleasure to have you back, my friend. We missed you over the holiday season. Hopefully you had an enjoyable time with you and yours.
Absolutely, I did.
Excellent.
Sure.
Excellent. You. Matt did a great job of holding down the fort. You were barely missed.
Well,
barely
sure
missed.
I was. Probably not at all.
All right, gentlemen, let's talk a little college football. Let's get into it. All right. I want to go to your title, and let's talk about the Ohio State-Miami game. We talked earlier in the season about Miami, Mark, and I was starting to be a believer before the Louisville loss, before the loss to the Cardinals. I thought that they had some of the elements that you want good football teams to have. Beck was, I think, playing a little bit better football before that game. And, I thought they had a solid running game, Tony at receiver. And then they had one of the things that I think all good defenses need, which is a really good D-line that can get after the quarterback. I mean, Mesidor and Bain, shout out Dark Knight Rises, was, going to be a top 5, top 10 pick in the draft. So, they've got a good group up front. But since then, you watch this team, and offensively, Mark, they got some issues. I know Fletcher's a solid back, but I think we've seen Carson Beck revert back to some of his Carson Beck ways from back in Georgia. I could see why people might be picking Miami to win this game. Believe you me, I can see why, but I don't know. Mark, do you see some of the issues with this Miami offense that, kind of post those losses?
So I watched the Texas A&M game, of course, and all you have to do is look at the box score that backs up the play on the field. So, yes, there have to be concerns because, does Texas Tech have a hard-hitting defense? Are they solid on defense?
You mean A&M, Mark?
A&M, what did I say?
Anyway. Yeah, I thought you said Tech. I'm sorry, pardon. Okay.
All of those things, yes, we know. However, scoring 10 points and not scoring a touchdown until there's a minute 45 left in the game, that's pretty alarming. However, when I look at Miami's personnel on offense, I don't see any weaknesses on this team. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're elite at these places, but they don't have a glaring soft spot on either side of the ball, and especially on offense, they have one of the better lines in the game. They've had some injuries at running back, so that's one of the reasons why they've really relied on Mark Fletcher.
Right.
And the two outside guys that complement one of the most exciting players in the nation, Malachi Toney, all of that works. Carson Beck, I will, in a different sense, I will put him in the same bucket, hear me out, as Drew Aller in his first playoff game last year against SMU, because Drew Aller was transparent. He was invisible, I should say, in that game against SMU because he wasn't needed. They were up 21-0 before you blinked, and he was just, as a quarterback, you rarely see that in a big time game. Not needed. Doesn't matter who's playing the position. Carson Beck, even though the game was close last week, I can't remember against a good team in a big situation where a quarterback was used as little as Carson Beck in a close football game. He was pretty much invisible. And I think a lot of that had to do with he's made mistakes. Our defense is dominating. It's windy. It's this kind of game, and we're not going to let him lose the game.
Right. Be more of a game, kind of a little bit more of a game manager kind of. I know that's a divisive term for quarterback play nowadays, but I hear what you're saying.
Like Ryan Day did against Texas, except Julian Sayin was a redshirt freshman in his first start, and Carson Beck's a 3-year starter.
That's right. Well, let me put it this way. I would say this. I do think, from an offensive standpoint, I think they've had a pretty solid running game. I think Fletcher's a solid running back. I think Tony's a solid receiver. It's just, and I've watched about 5 Miami games this year. And in watching the Texas A&M game, I thought to myself going into that game, I thought Miami had the better all-around team. But, and we talked about this before the game, I thought A&M had the coaching advantage with Elko and maybe the quarterback advantage with Reed over Beck. And boy, was I wrong with the Reed over Beck advantage at quarterback. Because even though I thought Miami's defensive line was really good in that game, if you watch that game, Reed was missing throws. It was bad. It was horrible. And he was missing throws from clean pockets, Mark. It wasn't just he was under duress. I mean, he had receivers open, and he was missing throws.
You know what else he couldn't do in that game? He could not throw a swing pass.
Yeah,
I don't know how many swing passes they threw to running backs that should have been gaining 7 and 8 yards. And it's not like if you look at his completion percentage, they were being not completed, but he was not, as Tom Brady explains all the time, one of the basic passes that you need to be able to complete and put in the exact spot as a quarterback, a big time quarterback, is a swing pass into a running back's hands right in the flow of the route. So he can take off with the ball. Those dudes were doing handstands just to catch the ball behind them and just to gather in the ball. And half the time they're getting thrown for 2-yard losses because they're stumbling and trying to catch a football that he consistently could not throw. The interception he threw, the first one, not the second one, was, oh my word. That thing was airmailed about 40 feet behind and above Casey Concepcion. That was a horrendous throw. There was another drive where they eventually had to punt, would have easily been in field goal range. He had a wide open Casey Concepcion. He grounded the thing, and Concepcion trapped it. That would have put him in field goal range. They had to punt on that series. Yeah, he caught a little bit of a hot hand when they finally moved the last couple drives. He started to sling it a little bit, but yeah, he was really bad in that game.
Yeah, the interception in the end zone to end it was absolutely awful. It was just a bad throw. I will say this with Ohio State and just kind of the offensive. There's 2 things about the game. I mean, a lot of people are talking about the matchup with, O-line versus D-line. And as Ohio State fans, Mark, you know this from the past. We've run into D-lines from the state of Florida that have caused Ohio State problems in the past. See the Sugar Bowl against Florida State in 98, see, Florida in 06 chasing around Troy Smith. That Harvey and Moss combination, I remember, caused a lot of problems that night. By the way, those 2 defensive ends were never heard from ever again, by the way, from Florida. I don't think they did anything in the NFL after that, by the way. But in any case, what I would say is this. As much as it's the offensive line that I think is the key, I think Sane and the offensive game plan are really the key to the game. Sane has not got off to really good starts in either one of the last two games, throwing a pick on the opening drive. I'm really interested to see the offensive game plan as well. Do they come out? Do they give him some easy button throws? Let him throw some screens? You talk about rub routes, Mark, swing passes, wheel routes out of the backfield. Get him some confidence early, and then let him try to move the ball down the field as the game moves along. I'm also interested to see if they put a little bit more emphasis on the run game in this too. So those are the two things. As much as you're looking at the trenches, I'm looking at Sane and the offensive game plan as well. I don't know if you guys have comments on that. I know we've talked about it a little bit before, Matt.
Yeah, no, I think one of the big overarching stories, not just of this Ohio State-Miami game, but really of the playoff in general, and this basically includes the Alabama-Indiana game, is, the Heisman finalists, right? Mendoza and Sayin.
Yes.
Are they really going to live up to, the accolades that they received over the course of the season? And, I don't think either player personally deserved to be a Heisman finalist. Like the quarterback room in college football nationally this year has been way down from other years. And you can't say that this is a weak quarterback room and then say, oh, but a quarterback was the best player in the country and three quarterbacks deserve to be Heisman finalists. So there is a lot for Sayin and Mendoza to prove in this game. And yet, and this is kind of part of the complexity of all this. There's a lot for Sayin and Mendoza to prove in these games, but they're not going to win by being the hero. They're going to win by being efficient. They're going to win by not making the mistakes that Marcel Reed made for Texas A&M against Miami. It's like they don't have to be special, but they do have to take command and they have to make the big throws in the big moments in the key situations. Like if Julian Sayin needs to be just really strong on 3rd and 5.
Yes.
In this game. If he figures out 3rd and 5 in this game, Ohio State should be in really good shape. And if he doesn't, then it could be a nail biter, like a 10-9, 12-10 game going right down to the wire. But if Julian Sayin, just gets enough protection in those 3rd and medium situations and he converts a decent percentage of them, that, to me, in addition, of course, to avoiding a Marcel Reed performance, that's how Ohio State wins this game, probably with a working margin.
Well, yeah, don't say that 13-10 score, Mark. We don't want to, Matt. We don't want to hear that. That's a score where we don't.
I didn't say it. I said 12-10.
There you go. There you go.
I worked around it.
Yeah, thanks, my friend. I'll say this, though. This is, Joe Burrow 2019 is not knocking on the door this year in college football. Yeah, that's for sure. That's
for Heisman QB, and that's my whole beef with this year's Heisman discussion, that we know what a Heisman quarterback looks like.
Sure.
Burrow 19, Mariota 14, Cam Newton, Danny Werfel, Charlie Ward, guys who consistently roasted opponents. Mendoza, again, I want to go to battle with him. He's a great guy. He's a leader. He's a winner, does so many wonderful things. But he threw interceptions against Iowa, Penn State, and Oregon, and he had to undo his mistakes. That's a winner, but that's not a Heisman player.
Well, let's
part of the backdrop to these playoff games.
Well, let's think about college football at large. Let's take a grand view of this. If you look at the last however many national champions, college football, and I'm one of the things that fascinates me about football is roster construction. And you take a look at 19 and 20 offensive teams won the national championship. 2019 LSU, 2020 Alabama were offensive teams. What were the Georgia teams? They were defensive teams. We've really, it's flipped. It's flipped in college football. Now, some of that, a lot of people are going to talk about NIL and the portal and all of that. I get it. But you really don't have a wagon offensively like you had in 19 with LSU or 20 with Bama. I think our 22 offense, had JSN not gotten hurt and Travion Henderson not gotten hurt, could have been a special offense that year with Stroud, Henderson, Marvin Harrison, Igbuka, and as our receivers and Trey Henderson running the ball. I think that could have been a special offense. But really, college football over the last few years, if you got to think about it, the teams that have won have been more built around defense. I don't know if you guys have noticed kind of that sea change in college football lately.
Hey, Dr. Buckeye?
Yes.
I mentioned this on a previous Monday show with Mark, but now I'm going to make sure I mention it directly to you.
Yes.
I had a research assistant look at shootouts in college football over the past 10 years, going back to 2016. And I defined a shootout as a game in which both teams score 30 or more points in the same game. At the power conference level, not talking about group of five, but just the power conference level. So this is not games between one power conference team and one group of five team. Only two power conference teams going at it. In 2016, Dr. Buckeye, there were 71 power conference shootouts. This year, 42. That is a significant drop off.
Yeah.
We have seen the sport change.
Well, both sides of the ball, because the NFL, I think, scoring has been down over the last few years to a certain extent, if I'm not mistaken. So
that's a trend in the NFL for like 50 years, that the NFL, the defense catches up to the offense and they change the rules, and then they boost the offense, and then 10, 15 years later, the same thing happens, and they got to readjust the rules to help the offense again, and over and over and over.
Right. Yeah, it's just interesting to me to see how it flips. Like a few years, you see offensive dominated teams, then you see defensive dominated teams. It's just we look for trends, it's fascinating to me. Just on to the just a couple other games. I want to comment on the Whittingham hire real quick. I will say this: Darrell's lack of respect for Texas Tech. I wouldn't be so there. I think Texas Tech has a really good defense. I think it's top 2 or 3 defense in the country. This is a defensive year of college football. Remember, that front seven of Indiana caused Dante Moore a lot of problems in that second half. I think that front seven, and in particular that D-line of Texas Tech, could cause a lot of problems to Dante Moore and that Oregon offensive line. If you guys have some thoughts on that.
Well, I think one thought that comes to mind is that, we've talked a little bit about, how BYU might not adequately prepare Texas Tech, and the Big 12 might not adequately prepare Texas Tech for what's coming. But then we need to flip it to the other side. Did playing James Madison adequately prepare Oregon for what's coming around the bend with Texas Tech? So it does work both ways, and it does feed into my sense of I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen in this game. Ultimate coin flip game.
Yeah, it's difficult for me to separate these two teams, but as I was going through the stats posting this video that was released here yesterday, what really stands out is I'm super impressed with Oregon running the football. And when they want to, they can run it about as well as anyone. And Texas Tech is top 2 or 3 in the nation in rush defense, and that's going to be a heck of a battle to try to sort that out and see who wins that war. I am not a huge, and this has nothing to do with a young man, this has to do with watching him play. I'm not a huge Baron Morton fan. I don't think he's anything exceptional. Yeah. He's a decent player. He's a good player. I think Dante Moore's a superior quarterback.
Yeah. I think the question is even with Texas Tech's defense as good as it is, can Oregon, or can Texas Tech's offense get somewhere in the, what you think, lower to mid 20s to win that game, guys? Somewhere in that neighborhood, 21 to 24 points in that neighborhood? Because Oregon's offense is still that good.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking this is gonna revolve more around the Oregon offense versus the Texas Tech defense. Like, that's really what I'm thinking of. I think Texas Tech's going to need to get a turnover that it cashes into a short field and or points to win this game. So, sometimes, Dr. Buckeye, I do have a number in mind, like Texas Tech needs to get 27, Oregon needs to get 30. I'm not really processing that game through that lens.
Sure.
This time, I think it's more about, it's going to be Texas Tech's defense has to do something to tilt the field And if Dante Moore doesn't make a mistake, if the Oregon offense doesn't make a significant mistake, I don't think Texas Tech's offense alone, without assistance, without getting a short field, without getting something extra to go its way, I don't think Texas Tech's offense is enough to win this game without help. The Tech defense will need to help the Tech offense. That much I'm confident about going into the Orange Bowl.
Just to give a stat to what I pointed out with the Oregon rushing attack against the Texas Tech defense. Texas Tech, number 1 in the nation in rush defense, 68 yards per game. Oregon is number 13 in rush offense. Yeah. Texas Tech, as I go through these numbers, Texas Tech, Indiana, and Ohio State are the 3 teams that stand out in the nation that are really good at everything, statistically speaking.
Yeah.
They all have single digits next to almost every number. And I'm not talking about just looking at rush offense, rush defense, pass offense and defense. I'm looking across the board. I'm measuring everything in regards to yards per play, yards per carry, 3rd and 4th down conversions.
Yep.
All of these, pass efficiency, because I'm not a big believer in total passing yardage being that important, because obviously the better teams don't have to throw the ball. But pass efficiency, all of these things, Texas Tech just ranks extremely high in all of this. They're number 1 in turnover margin. Their kicker doesn't miss. Oregon's had to step on the field against Indiana. And then they've had to step on the field against elite units, Iowa's defense and special teams, USC's offense. Mm-hmm. So they might be a little bit more battle tested.
Yeah. Yeah, I that's one thing that, by the way, that gives me confidence with the Buckeyes stopping Fletcher in the run game, strength up the middle, first round defensive tackle, Caden McDonald, best pair of linebackers in the country in Reese and Styles. So it gives me a lot of confidence we can contain that run game. I would say this, by the way, better chance for the upset. Maybe I should know this, but Indiana or Alabama to beat Indiana or Ole Miss to beat Georgia?
I would go, wow, that's really a good one, because I keep double clutching on my answer. I'm going to say I really believe in Kirby Smart. I really believe in Georgia. I watched the first time that they played. Maybe Georgia figured something out. Ole Miss scored 5 consecutive touchdowns on 5 consecutive possessions. The last 3 possessions, basically 1 yard per play for the Georgia defense against the Ole Miss offense. And obviously Lane Kiffin's missing. They didn't miss him against Tulane. They may miss him big in this one. And Georgia's just battle tested and also big game tested. And their coach and coaching staff is Alabama is really a shaky football team. For us to be down to the final 8, they are performance-wise the shakiest of the bunch by far. They're all over the place, and maybe they regain their mojo. I got to give them all the credit in the world to be as resilient as they were against Oklahoma, considering that they hadn't played good football in 6 weeks. They got trounced by Georgia. Their confidence had to be, you would think, at an all-time low. Yeah. And they're down 17-0 on the road. Nothing's going right. They didn't get a first down in that game till 9 minutes left in the first half, and they battle back and win that game. Maybe they play up to their 5-star ratings across the roster or something, but it just really bothers me that they cannot run the football.
Yes.
And I just think that being that one-dimensional against this Indiana team is going to be way too much for them to overcome.
Yeah, I have to say.
And I'm sorry, David. I'm going to make one other.
I'm sorry.
And maybe it's not your fault. They would have one other element there that could make a difference if they didn't have a traditional rushing attack from the running back position, but they had it at the quarterback position, but they don't even have that. So that just really makes Alabama one-dimensional.
I will say this. I do think that Alabama's O-line gives me a lot of concern on this. I agree with you. I think that Black Hemby combination from Indiana has been very underrated, gives them a little bit more balance offensively. I think Alabama's path is for the pass pro to hold up and for Simpson to have a hot hand. Now, he could. He's got the receivers, Williams, Bernard, Horton, those guys. They can make some plays. Although, a big part of that comeback over Oklahoma was Matera throwing a pick six and bad special teams play by Oklahoma that cost them in that comeback, by the way. So be really interested to see, if Alabama can hold up front and if Simpson can get a hot hand. I think that's their best path. You know what? Tough to beat a good team twice. I know with Georgia, but I think Georgia's playing better defense than they played earlier in the year when Ole Miss gutted them. When they had the shootout in Athens. I know Lacey's a good back. I know Chambliss is a good quarterback, but I just think Georgia's playing better on the defensive side of the ball. I think they get enough out of Stockton to win that game.
Tough to beat a good team twice. Overrated stat, David.
Okay.
Keep going.
Well, okay. All right.
Can't be substantiated, but I know that's a theory.
All right.
I would say that there's a better chance that Alabama beats Indiana than Ole Miss beats Georgia.
Okay.
It's partly because I think Kirby Smart earns trust. He has won back-to-back SEC titles. Like, Kirby Smart's been the constant in this sport in the way that Dabo Swinney has ceased to be.
Yes.
Dabo's no longer staying on that mountaintop. Kirby Smart has. So that earns my respect. Also, no Lane Kiffin to go up against Kirby the second time. Like the coaching matchup, clear-cut advantage for Georgia. So it's not just Kirby in isolation, but Kirby going up against Pete Golding and the patchwork Ole Miss staff. But the third thing is Georgia played a clunker in this Sugar Bowl last year. Kirby's talking about that he's been hammering that home. We're not coming to New Orleans to lose this time around. That Notre Dame team was really good. It was really physical. This Ole Miss team is not as physical as that Notre Dame team was. I just have a hard time thinking that Georgia is not only going to play a second straight Sugar Bowl quarterfinal clunker, but also Georgia's defense was bad against Ole Miss. You got to think that Georgia's going to have a much better defensive performance this time around. So I just feel really, really solid about Georgia. I feel good about Indiana beating Alabama, but Mendoza could throw a pick because, again, he did it against Iowa. He did it against Oregon. He did it against Penn State. What if he throws another one? This time Fernando Mendoza is a Lifetime movie, Honey, May I Sleep with Danger. Mendoza will do that, okay? And if he flirts with danger one more time, this time he might not be able to dig himself out of a hole.
Georgia's defense was lousy early. Tennessee scored 41. Ole Miss had the big first half. But ever since they pulled it together against Ole Miss in the fourth quarter, Georgia Tech 9 points, Alabama 7. We could go through a few other games. They have been, not vintage Georgia, but extremely good Georgia. Yeah, I think. And also keep in mind, Tulane ran the ball against Ole Miss. They just got behind. But if you look at that game, they were able to run the ball pretty easily against Ole Miss. And Georgia will be able to do even more, you would think.
Agreed. Yeah, I think they get enough out of Stockton. Zachariah Branch there, Matt, makes a big play maybe for Georgia, a former USC wide receiver. Watch out for him. Yeah, boy, a Branch Lemon combination would have been a pretty good duo out there. And we won't go.
Okay, Doctor, you've mentioned it. I just got to say, one of the most quietly underperforming assistant coaches in America is USC wide receiver coach Dennis Simmons, partly because he couldn't figure out Zachariah Branch. Think about Dorian Singer, the big transfer from Arizona a few years ago. Like, USC has quietly had, Mackay is the Biletnikoff winner, and Jacoby Lane was a really good number 2, but where's the depth? Where's that third, fourth, fifth receiver? There was Brendan Rice and Taj Washington a few years ago, USC's receiver depth has really leveled off. It's gone downward. Dennis Simmons has underperformed as USC wide receiver coach.
Agree. Last comment on Whittingham. I do think it's a clear upgrade. I think it's the best they could do with the situation that they were facing right now. I did not get a chance to hear any of the comments from the other side of the septic tank, as Mr. Dace always says to Mark. But that being said, your thoughts overall on the hire, and then is this more or less, could it be a Band-Aid hire? More or less a short-term kind of fix? Or do you expect this to, or are you hearing from that side that this could be more of a long-term fix?
I would just say that Kyle Whittingham, being 66 years old, I don't see him coaching at Michigan for more than 5 years.
Okay.
But like 5 years, like he could get a lot done at Michigan.
Sure.
In 5 years. So, it's short term in the sense that you're not thinking about a Bo Schembechler length tenure, right? You're not thinking about a Lloyd Carr length tenure. But like it's not necessarily a stopgap like this. If Kyle Whittingham, I personally thought he was wanting to retire, so I was obviously wrong. That wasn't true. So like if he has the juice and he's up for it, like he can win national championships at Michigan. So I don't think it's patchwork in that sense that Michigan's just trying to kind of hold things together. No, this is an aspirational hire. I think Michigan did extremely well. Like I think we would all agree, Whittingham's style is a great fit for Michigan in terms of the way Michigan likes to play.
Build the trenches.
Kyle Whittingham likes to play. Defensive line, pass rush, physical, punch you in the mouth. That's Michigan football. That's the identity. So Michigan really did well under the circumstances.
I found it amusing that Kyle Whittingham's announcement of his hatred for Ohio State was less than convincing when he was asked about it. I don't know if any of you saw that, but he just kind of said, I guess I have to now. Kind of like, okay, sure.
Yes.
And then he went on to praise Urban Meyer for the next, 60 seconds and his close friendship with Urban Meyer. And I'm sure Michigan fans don't love to hear about and be reminded of 0-7.
Yeah, you want to watch something funny? The Portnoy Urban Meyer interview earlier today talked about that, by the way. It's worth a chuckle, by the way, very much so. Portnoy tries to claim that the loss shouldn't have counted this year because of the Morse. I literally had to turn it off there because I was going to vomit, Mark. I try, but I can't anymore, Mark.
This is an assignment for our audience here and for loyal viewers of the Voice of College Football. I want you to serve me up evidence, any evidence that this guy is not a complete moron. I want any evidence because I have yet to see it. The guy is a moron. I just see no value in anything that he has to say. And I've not been a ardent follower, that's for sure. I didn't even know who he was until about 6 months ago. So certainly, let me know, folks. Bring me video clips of anything insightful that he has ever said about college football.
You'll have to ask the other folks from the cesspool. Maybe ask your buddy Dace, Mark. He might be able to clue you in a little bit more on the fandom that is Dave Portnoy. I can't imagine
that he could even defend that nonsense.
Good show, gentlemen. Good to have you back, Mark.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. All right, Matt, you ready for one more?
Absolutely.
I think the pockets are dry from Christmas. We understand.
Yep.
We're here, folks. Keith, how you doing tonight?
Doing great, guys. How's it going?
Doing just fine. What's up?
Yeah, I'm real happy with Whittington. I think Dave's life's getting harder. Now he not only has to deal with Lanning and Signetti, but he's got to deal with Campbell, Fitzgerald, and Whittingham.
Yeah, same for Lincoln Riley at USC.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Lincoln's probably sweating a lot harder than Day.
So you're thinking Day's winning percentage maybe drops below 90%.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Maybe. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we're happy about that. And I'm glad to see DeReal has aligned with me about 1 out of 100,
Okay.
and that he sees Oregon as a double-digit favorite against Texas Tech. And I have a feeling both of you will be before game time too. The one thing missing in your analysis and everybody else's analysis, Mark, is strength of schedule when it comes to these defensive ratings. That Texas Tech has the stellar defensive rating. And I remember when Michigan played Nebraska, Nebraska was a top 5 defense. I think they were 3rd or 4th in the nation when they were in the cupcake schedule. And then Haynes got like $1.25, and we ran for like 2.25 yards against them, and made their defensive efficiency plummeted when we ran against them.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to see the strength of schedule for Oregon's opponents versus the strength of schedule of Texas Tech's opponents. I think you might
watch
be
my
surprised.
video, Keith. I posted a video. I went through strength of schedule. I went through everything I possibly could that would take me less than 2 hours to research. So check it out. I have not discounted that. If you listen to our conversation about that game, I think we all covered it to a certain extent from a different angle, but I specifically talked about how I considered BYU as a scrappy football team, a admirable football team, but certainly not a ultra talented football team, being arguably, and based on results, the second best team, or the second best team in the Big 12, or the best team that Texas Tech had to face this year. And so I think I covered the ground of being less than impressed with Texas Tech's schedule, especially since they played no Power 4 conference teams in non-conference play.
Yeah, and you did the 2 common opponents with them too, right? They played 2 common opponents.
Yes, they both just annihilated Oklahoma State and Oregon State. So I don't know that we can gain much from that, except they just both ran roughshod over both of them.
Oregon's annihilation was almost twice as bad as Texas Tech's.
Yeah, once it gets to a certain point, I don't know that 42-7 and 69-3. You're right. Oregon's was just a decimation, but they pretty much both were.
And Texas Tech was a solid control. You know, they clearly beat them soundly.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And it was September.
Yeah. About this SEC stuff and 5-0 versus a 2-4, I got to admit I'm enjoying it. Now, would 2017 LSU complain about who their opponents were as they were going through the bowl season and going through the title game? Would 29 Alabama complain who they had to face? 21 and 22 Georgia. Did they complain about who they had to face? Those SEC teams beat all comers, no matter who they were, what level. They even beat an excellent Ohio State team in 22. The SEC used to win those games, and they're 2-4 against them this year. You just have to admit that the SEC is down this year.
Well, down from what? Yeah, down from last year. The SEC's better this year than it was last year.
It could be last year, but down from 21, 22, 17, and 19.
Okay.
Yeah, when SEC was good, they never complained about the competition that they had to beat.
Absolutely. I think you make a great point, Keith. And to take a page from Matt's earlier comments, the elite of the elite, that's in front of us. Georgia, Alabama, Oregon, Indiana, Ohio State, the cream of the crop, Ole Miss as well, that's in front of us. So we will be able to make that judgment. It should be waged right in front of us. We should have multiple games between those two conferences. From top to bottom, based on regular season play, there is no question that the SEC was better than the Big Ten. However, I reserve my overall judgment for the entire season. I will release my conference rankings when all is said and done, because the Big Ten is playing better in postseason play. Now, 5-0 versus 2-4 does not tell anything close to the complete story. So, of course, we'll delve into that. But yes, the Big Ten is taking care of business, and the SEC generally has not. You are correct.
Yes, and I give SEC credit for owning the pre-conference season. They clearly dominated the pre-conference season, and I give them credit for that. But we in the Big Ten get credit for the postseason.
Thus far.
Thus far, yes.
Yep, thus far. And yeah, like, you know, we can all be adults here and just say the Big Ten has done better, but these have been the undercard bowls. Now we're getting into the main event.
Yeah.
Now we're getting into Ollie Frazier, Hearns Hagler, you know, the big ones.
Did you see my acronym for the SEC earlier, Mark?
I was not so graced to perceive that. No,
I call them schedule easy and cry. You know, they schedule easy as they can, and then when they don't make the playoffs at the end of the season, they cry, we need to get more of our teams in. We need to get more of our teams in.
Do you want to
Is that a pattern?
Do you want to list all Big Ten non-conference opponents, and you want me to list all SEC non-conference opponents?
We've been through this before, and it's a mixed bag in that. There's half of the games agree with me, and half of the games agree with you. It's really a split bag.
No, that's your perspective on it. Penn State, Maryland, Rutgers, and there's one other I may be missing.
Indiana.
Indiana, thank you. They're the only 4 teams in the country, include the ACC and the Big 12, that refused to schedule a power conference opponent.
Sure.
That's pathetic.
Yep.
Give me the Big Ten's second best win in non-conference play in the regular season.
So yeah, that's the I just want credit if we can win the postseason. I want credit for the postseason.
Absolutely.
Only,
I'm with you, Keith. I'm with
only
you.
as much as it counts as
I'm just having a healthy debate.
I grew up in the pre-conference season.
I bleed Big Ten blood, so I'm right there with you. I just do my best to be fair.
Yeah, and I'm trying to be fair too. SEC deserved their credit early. It looks like we deserve our credit late.
Yeah, and if let's say it's pretty much a stalemate from here on out. Let's say, you know, pretty much half and half, and we've got a national championship game of fill in the blank, Indiana and Georgia, and it's a nail biter down to the last play. I may throw up my hands and say I have no idea at this point. But so as Matt says, the most important games are in front.
Yes. My last point is, did I hear that Texas top 3 running backs have opted out of the game to go in the portal?
I know their best one did, or their most productive one at least, Trey Wisner. Yes, I know.
Yeah, I think their 3 tops did.
Yeah, I apologize. I've done a poor job of keeping track of the portal. I did review it yesterday, I believe, but I've been all over that in previous cycles. But,
well, I'm my sole source of information is notifications on my phone, and I got that one on my note. I got a notification that all 3 top producing running backs for Texas opted out of the game to go in the portal.
Oh, opted out. I'm sorry, opted out of the game. I thought you said hit the transfer. Oh, they all went to the transfer portal.
They're going to the transfer portal. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So it should be an interesting game, just who has the most opt-outs and what's left. But it's a good preseason practice.
Yeah, well, it worked out for your guys last year, Keith, of course, with no Will Johnson and on and on and on, all the guys that missed the game last year.
Mason Graham and Kevin and Grant. Yep. Yep. And we still managed to pull it out of the fire. Yep.
Well, basically, you played on a sloppy field and you were just better than Alabama. I'm not blaming the sloppy field. I'm just recalling how Alabama had all sorts of issues.
Well, I think that sloppy field accounted for 2 Milroe turnovers early in the game.
Yeah, didn't you get a safety, or it was like
that was kind of the game, and it was just too big a hole for Bama to climb out of. Yeah,
it was 16-0 early. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, I think Keith, Milroe accounted for those turnovers.
What's that? Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, I don't know if any of you caught this, but there was a time earlier this season where the Seahawks ran just one special play with Milroe in the game He committed a turnover. Like
Oh,
his football IQ is just so low. That was, just it. As you reflect on Milroe's career at Alabama, man, just so many natural gifts, but just not the situational awareness. So it was. I would say it's Milroe much more than the playing conditions.
yeah. Well, I love talking to both of you guys. Go Blue and go Big Ten.
Appreciate you being
Thank
here,
you,
Keith. VOCFB.com. You can catch the latest in a number of perspectives on college football, the bowl season, playoff football, and of course, VOCFB.com. And you can check out your favorite merch, combining the two best brands That's your favorite team and the voice of college football. Matt, what's going on with you this week at Trojans Wire and with the USC at the voice of college football?
So at Trojans Wire, we're covering Danton Lynn going to Penn State. And now USC begins a defensive coordinator search, and Pete Kwiatkowski, recently fired by Texas, should be the top target. We'll see if USC lands Kwiatkowski as its new defensive coordinator. So we're all over that story. And then for the USC show, we have our usual time Tuesdays, 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific. But with the Alamo Bowl being Tuesday night, we're going to do a live post-game show. So right after the USC TCU Alamo Bowl ends, myself, Ethan Inman, Crashlet Collier will be with you for a live show to take in the Alamo Bowl against TCU.
Dr. C, we see you in queue. Appreciate you being here. Hopefully you got my message a few minutes ago. We have run out of time. Please give us a call back later this week. I will show up on Tuesday night. We appreciate you being here, everyone. 10 p.m. Eastern time. My next show is Iowa Live. Hawkeyes preparing for Vandy, of course. And so we've got an interesting matchup between the Hawks and the Commodores, and we will break it down with Corey Bratta and the Big Ten Live show. And we will see you here soon at the Voice of College Football.